out of you. Ninth value, self-esteem and self-motivation. For this group, I am sure this is the number one issue. At higher levels in organizations like this group has the potential, and many of most of you will rise to, people almost never fail because they aren't smart enough. And they almost never fail because they aren't well educated enough. If they fail, it is classically some form of subconscious low self-esteem that results in self-destructive and organizationally destructive behavior. So self-esteem is a huge issue for this group. In addition, self-esteem is the foundation for happiness, and happiness is the end of the game, right? And I don't mean happiness having a good time on Friday night, but I mean happiness in a life well lived. When you're 80 years old, you can look back and say, yeah, that was hard, and I'm glad I did it. Blood, sweat, and tears, hard work, happiness. That's the end of the game. Sometimes business people get confused. They think money's the end of the game. Nothing wrong with money. Money's a good thing. But money's not an end. It can be a means to an end. It's not an end. Happiness, in that deep Aristotelian sense of the word, is the end of the game. And the foundation for happiness is real self-esteem. Self-esteem is a complex subject. I want to share a few thoughts with you. First, self-esteem is primarily self-confidence in your ability to live and be successful given the facts of reality. So you earn self-esteem by how you live your life. Nobody can give you self-esteem, and you cannot give anybody self-esteem. You cannot give your children self-esteem. Self-esteem has to be earned. Live your life with integrity. Raise your self-esteem. That's why integrity is important. Second thought, and this is the most important, and I know the most controversial thought I have tonight, so follow me on this one. Let you think about this. In order to have a high level of self-esteem, you must believe at a very deep level you're capable of being good and you have the moral right to be happy. In order to have a high level of self-esteem, you must believe at a very deep level you're capable of being good and you have the moral right to be happy. Unfortunately, a very commonly held belief in our society is that as human beings we're born bad. And the fundamental reason is we're bad is we're selfish. And selfish is bad, right? I can see Johnny in the sandbox, 3 or 4 years old, playing with his truck, having a good time, not bothering anybody. Along comes Fred. Fred would like to have Johnny's truck. Johnny doesn't want to give him his truck. Discussion, debate, argument ensues. Mom, dad, Sunday school teacher, kindergarten teacher gets involved in the argument. Mom says, hey, Johnny, give that truck to Fred. Don't be selfish. Don't be bad. 2 great moral lessons being taught right there in the sandbox. First, what did Fred learn? Where does Fred have the right to Johnny's truck? You want to know where our social welfare system came from? Right there in the sandbox. That's it. How about Johnny? And I would argue probably everybody in here is Johnny. What did you learn in that sandbox? Not to go for what you want, that your life is not as important as other people's, that Fred is more important than you. His need, is more important than you. It's an interesting lesson. Let's talk about selfishness a minute, and let's define it as acting one's rational, long-term self-interest. And the reason for that is that if you think about biology, immutable, non-negotiable fact of reality, everything that is alive has to act in its self-interest or die. A lion has to hunt or starve. A deer has to run from the hunter or be eaten. Trees shade out other trees to get sunlight. Amoeba take chemicals that other amoeba would like to have. Life is, by definition, self-sustaining action. Anything that's alive that quits sustaining its life does what? It dies. To say that man is bad because he's selfish is basically to say we're bad because we're alive. It would be analogous to saying the sun's bad because it's hot, or gravity's bad because it holds us down. The sun should be hot. Gravity should hold us down. And as living entities, we have to act in our self-interest or die. That's the way Mother Nature designed the system. Now let's talk about acting in our self-interest, because we get this false alternative. And the false alternative is to take advantage of other people or to self-sacrifice, neither one of which make any sense. In fact, a lot of people think that taking advantage of other people is selfish. Here's the irony. Taking advantage of other people is not selfish, it's self-destructive. It's self-destructive in 2 ways. First, nobody's going to trust you. You might fool Tom, Dick, and Harry, but they're going to sell Sue, Jane, and Fred, and nobody's going to trust you. You probably know people like that. If you try to take advantage of other people, you will not be trusted. And you're not going to be too happy and too successful if you're not trusted. The other thing is you're going to do a lot more damage to your own psychology than you do to other people if you try to manipulate other people. In my experience, I get to meet a lot of, quote, successful people. And the interesting observation, I've never met anybody that was successful and happy that I think got there taking advantage of other people. Now, I know some people that have a lot of money that I think got there taking advantage of other people. And they're the most unhappy people I have ever met. If you go about trying to manipulate other people and let go of reality, the truth, you're going to do a lot more damage to you than you do to them. Taking advantage of other people is not selfish, it's self-destructive. How about self-sacrifice? Self-sacrifice is the moral code of our society, right? We're all supposed to self-sacrifice. I want you to ask, what I would argue is maybe the most important question you can ask yourself. Ask yourself this question. Do you have as much right to your life as anybody else has to their life? Do you have as much right to your life as anybody else has to their life? Of course you do. Of course you do. Why would you believe anything different than that? Taking advantage of other people and self-sacrifice, neither one make any sense. But there is a rigorous, demanding moral code that underlies free societies and free markets. And that code is that we are fundamentally traders. We trade value for value. We get better together. In our banking business, we helped our clients be economically successful and financially secure. They let us make a profit doing it. We got better together. Life is about figuring out how to get better together. There are only two stable relationship conditions, win-win and lose-lose. Whenever you get greedy and you set up a win-lose, you see this in spousal relationships, your partner will get better and you end up in a lose-lose. Whenever you get self-sacrificial, interestingly enough, and you set up a lose-win, you'll get better and you end up in a lose-lose relationship. So in any important relationship in your life, you should ask, what's in it for me? That's a fair question. But you should also ask, what's in it for them? Because if there's nothing in it for them, at the end of the day, there'll be nothing in it for you. Life is about creating win-win relationships. And of course it is in your self-interest to help the people you care about, because you care about them. To help your family, your friends, the people you work with, the people you value in your lives, of course it's in your self-interest to help them. You know, if you have children and love your children, helping your children is not a sacrifice because you love your children. In fact, love is the ultimate expression of selfishness. Now, most people don't get that, but I'll give you an example to think about. You're getting ready to get married, it's your age group, very big event in your life. Your future spouse comes running up to you and says, honey, I am so excited about marrying you. It's the biggest self-sacrifice I've ever made. Not exactly what you want to hear, right? I believe it is in my self-interest to support the United Way. The United Way is an umbrella charity organization that does a tremendous amount of good in the communities that it operates in. I wouldn't want to live in the kind of community that exists if there were no United Way, and I wouldn't want my children to live in that kind of community. So I believe it is in my rational self-interest to support that kind of charitable and many other kinds of charitable organizations. So here's the challenge. A lot of people, when they think about selfish, they see it as taking advantage of other people, and that's actually self-destructive, or they have this kind of linear view of the world, and you see people that operate in here. What does really being selfish in the rational self-interest sense require? First, it requires the context. You ask yourself, what kind of world would I like to live in? And what would I enjoy doing helping to create that kind of world? And then you'd have a sense of purpose. You'd take care of your body. You'd exercise. You'd eat properly. You'd take care of your mind. You'd read, think, study. And you'd work hard to create healthy relationships with other human beings who share your values, because that is very important to you as a human being. What if everybody had a sense of purpose, did the best they could to take care of their body, did the best they could to take care of their mind, worked hard to create healthy human relationships with other people? What if everybody acted in their rational self-interest? I would argue 90% of the world's problems would go away. The constant thing you heard is, well, the problem is that people act selfishly. My observation is very few people act in their self-interest. Most people are self-destructive in one way or the other. I had a brother-in-law, drank 24 beers a day, got cirrhosis of the liver, surprise, drank 24 beers a day, died. People say he was selfish. No, he was self-destructive. Bernie Madoff, the guy that stole billions of dollars from his family and friends for 30 years, can you imagine living your life stealing from everybody that's important to you in your life? The guy said the best day in his life is when he got captured and put in jail. That's not selfish, that's self-destructive. One of the great philosophical observations of the history of man was expressed by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty is obviously very important. I'm in a libertarian organization, but liberty is an older idea. The world-changing idea was the pursuit of happiness. Before Jefferson, before the thinkers of the Enlightenment, everybody existed for somebody else's good. Good of the state, good of the church, good of the king. Nobody existed for their own good. Jefferson said each of us has a moral right to pursue our personal happiness. We're not guaranteed that success, but we have that right. That created the most successful and the most benevolent society in history. And I agree. Each of us has a moral right to the pursuit of our personal happiness. One other thought about self-esteem. In the real world, self-esteem primarily comes from productive work. And the reason for that is you spend a disproportionate amount of your time, effort, and energy at work. And I use productive work in the broadest context. Raising children, very difficult, very productive work. Because work drives self-esteem, that is what makes work so important. Something I said numerous times to the employees of BB&T. It's real important to BB&T that you do your job well, but it's far, far more important to you. It might fool me about how well you do your job, might fool your boss about how well you do your job, but you'll never fool you. If you don't do your work the best you can possibly do it, given your level of skill, given your level of knowledge, you will lower your self-esteem. By the way, as students, your schoolwork is your work. If you don't do your schoolwork the best you can do it, given your level of skill, given your level of knowledge, you will lower your self-esteem even if you get a good grade. Now here's the good news, the flip is true. Do your schoolwork the best you can do it, given your level of skill, given your level of knowledge, and you will raise your self-esteem, which is a lot more important than whether you get a good grade or whether you get more money or whether you get a promotion, because it's about your character. It's about your character. I want to share with you one integrating idea and why I think egalitarianism is such a bad idea. This dates me, but one of my heroes is Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan was absolutely a great basketball player and a real inspiration for poor kids. Now, this will surprise you. I am not as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. There's a serious differential in performance. But what's interesting is I cannot possibly become as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. I don't care how hard I tried, how hard you tried to help me, I cannot become as good a basketball player as Michael Jordan. You cannot make the average great. You can make the average better. That may be very productive, may be very noble thing to do. You cannot make the average great. However, you can make the great average. By definitions, egalitarians have to be in the business of making the great average. You can easily make Michael Jordan as good a basketball player as me. Just cut his legs off, right? Oh, we would never do that. I don't know. We've been pretty tough on great people throughout history, poisoned Socrates, imprisoned Galileo, burned Joan of Arc. We're more sophisticated now. We do it with a lot of balls and chains. 1% of the taxpayers pay 25% of the taxes. 5% of the taxpayers pay 60% of the taxes, and 50% of the taxpayers pay no taxes. Great way to run a democracy. We do it with lots of government rules and regulations. Interesting observation. When we put balls and chains on great people, we reduce the quality of life for all of us. Thomas Edison not only invented the light bulb, he invented electrical generation. He invented the research laboratory itself. Put balls and chains on great people, reduce the quality of life for all of us, because great people make a disproportionate contribution to human well-being. Now, egalitarians like to argue that they have the moral high ground, because who can argue against everybody being equal? Who can argue against everybody being equal? You know what I think motivates egalitarians? It's the most destructive of all human emotions, and watch it in yourself. It's called envy. It's this kind of hatred for the good for being the good. Very destructive idea. 10th value is teamwork and mutual supportiveness. We want people that have strong personal goals, that think for themselves, but recognize in any organization